I'm Brian Van from sportbiketracker.com, and today we're going to install the Ohlins TTX shock on our project bike. Man, there's nothing like an Ohlins shock. You know, look at the quality, the workmanship, the bling, the adjustability, right? We've got rebound compression, hydraulic preload, right? We can lengthen or shorten the shock to dial in the geometry to make this thing handle the way we want to. That's a process we'll cover later. What we want to talk about right now is putting this pure piece of motorcycle two-wheeled sex on our project bike. What do we need to do special tool-wise or equipment-wise to do this? We have to be able to get the rear tire off the ground and then take the tire off. We're going to use our pit bull rear stand for that. Then, once we have the bike up off the ground, we've got the tire off, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use our pit bull jack stands, and I'm going to support the motorcycle by the rear set pegs. We have the Woodcraft rear sets on here now. They've got fixed pegs, so it's going to hold it very, very nicely. You can also do this with a fold-up stock pegs. You just got to make sure you really get this thing all the way inside so you're not obviously resting it on the spring-loaded part. Pretty simple to do. There's other ways you could do this. I mean, you could hang the tail from the rafters in your garage, whatever. This is the way we do it. We have the tools available here to do it, and it makes it nice and easy to do. So let's get started. Got our pit bull rear stand. Get that up in the air. Get this tire off. All right, tires off, calipers hanging. Let's grab our pit bull jack stands. Adjust these, get them right under the Woodcraft rear set foot pegs. And then we will take the pressure off the rear stand and put it on the foot pegs and the jack stands. Like so. Okay, now we're ready to go ahead and loosen the fasteners on the bike. We're going to try and do this without taking the clevis off the upper shock mount. Some bikes you can get away with it, some bikes you can't. I'm really hoping I can on this one so I don't have to deal with that. 14 millimeters is the size. I'm going to go after these with a T-handle and a wrench. Sometimes these are pretty darn tight and you may need something a little stronger than what I'm using, but I think we're going to be okay. Typically you'll find too that these fasteners are going to use a locking nut, okay? This is definitely going to make the list of stuff that you do not want to come loose. To get after the top one, we're going to use a swivel. Once again, still 14 millimeter. All right, we got all the nuts off. We're ready to go. Let's see if we can get the shock off without too much trouble. A great way to get the fastener out of the top here is just kind of jiggle on the stand a little bit, and it makes sliding the fastener off a whole lot easier. That is the upper one. There will be no pressure on the lower really, so it should come out pretty easily right now. Circle that around a little bit. There you go. There is the stock unit. Compare that to the new Ohlins unit. All right, now we're ready to slide the TTX shock into the swing arm. Let's see if we have any clearance issues here. You know, some bikes are tighter than others, and your process could look a lot different than this. So let's see if this one's going to dip down in there. The stock one came out, and that is pretty encouraging. And it looks like we're going to be able to get the Ohlins in here too without going any farther. Notice I've got one hand on the rear stand. Let's go ahead and get the fastener in there. Now I'm going to go ahead and just slide the fastener into the opening of the clevis a little bit, not so far as that the shock can't slide up in there, but just a little ways in there. I'm going to work the handle of the stand as I put a little pressure on that bolt, and it's going to go ahead and go right in there. Let's take a look at these nuts. Like I showed you earlier, or I spoke about, these are locking nuts. Very important. You still want to get them tight, right? But these are locking nuts, and even if it does happen to back off a little bit, it's going to still hold itself in place. That said, make sure you have them torqued down properly. If you're not comfortable with the tools or comfortable with torquing it yourself, you're not sure what to do, you know what? Look up the torque spec, grab a torque wrench. Torque specs are all readily available online, right? It doesn't really take a lot to find that. Grab a torque wrench, and that way you'll know that you're going to be good to go and you're not going to have any issues moving forward. Just get these nuts started, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to discontinue using the jack stands, and I'm going to move solely to the pit bowl rear. Okay, remember, rear wheel installation. Here's a critical thing, especially on this motorcycle. And at the end of the day, most of them are pretty much the same. You see this boss on the rear caliper hanger? And you have this channel here on the swing arm. It is critical that boss is located securely in that channel, right? If not, if it ends up outside, it's a train wreck back here. And trust me, that's a train wreck you don't want to have any part of. So be very cognizant of that as you're reassembling it, and when you're done, make sure you double, even triple check it if you're concerned about it at all. Let's grab the wheel, toss it back up in place. I'm going to kind of tip it over. I'm going to dip the caliper back in now. Make sure the pads are spread apart so that the rotor can actually make its way up into the caliper. Come forwards, grab a hold of this wicked huge 530 chain that I can't wait to cut off and throw in the trash. That's another video. We'll do a nice 520 chain kit install. Got some driven sprockets, probably gonna go a DID ERV3 rear chain. I'm gonna go ahead and just slide my ratchet under. You know, this is, I'll be honest with you, for me, this is a lot easier when I do it on the ground than it is to do it up in the air. Because on the ground, I can slide my foot underneath. It just makes my life a whole lot easier. And there we go. Let's get it past the chain adjuster. Get our adjuster block in there. I'm going to go about just finger tight, just get everything to seat up nicely in there. And then something that I like to do is I use a wrench to hold tension on the chain. You really want to make sure that those adjuster blocks are firmly up against the adjustment bolts. If they're not, they can come loose, vibrate in, axle pulls in. Also a train wreck you want to avoid. Another tip here is make sure the slots with your axle line up with the slot here on the axle block. I've seen people have the shoulder up over it so it's not lined up in there, and then the axle comes loose too, so pay attention to that. I like to throw a wrench in the chain like so. What that does, just puts pressure against those adjuster blocks and the adjuster bolts. Got the big 1/2-inch ratchet on there. Snug that up. Off that comes. And there you have it. One Ohlins TTX shock installed on our 2013 STG project bike.